Salve, parents. This is the last of 6 sessions of Latin for Parents, and today we are working through parse labeled translating. This particular skill is the most challenging that we do because it integrates every Latin skill that we have done, not only Latin for Parents, but also that we teach. This is the ultimate use of all of those skills together. It's like in piano when you're putting both hands and your feet together and you're putting all of it together in one spot. So first, what is parse label translating? Or we affectionately call it PLTing. Well, it has 3 parts. The first is to parse. Parsing means identifying the characteristics of a word. So for a verb, that means person, number, tense. For a noun, that means case, number, gender. For an adjective, that also means case, number, gender. Labeling identifies the part of speech, or more specific, use case of a word. And then translating is writing the sentence in correct English. And these do need to be done in that order. Before we get started about the nitty-gritty of how to do PLTing, let's talk about how to think about parse label translating. Parse label translating is not like a jigsaw puzzle. Every Latin student starts this way. Every Latin student sees a whole sentence and then sees each word as its own translation. And then in their mind, they try to move those words around in order to make a cohesive sentence. This works when you're very, very young and there are only a couple of words in the sentence. This strategy will not hold up to Cicero. So it's not like a jigsaw puzzle. Students think of it this way because there is no word order in Latin. So instead of going to look for, say, the verb or the subject someplace, they just kind of make a guess. Instead, parse label translating is like revealing a dot-to-dot picture. There is a way to do it. There is a beginning, there is an end, and if we do it in the right order, then we will come away with a cohesive picture. So, but it uses every grammar topic all in one place. This is the synthesis of all of our skills. And my goal today is to give you the tools to know exactly how to do that step by step. So we can move from jigsaw puzzle thinking to dot-to-dot puzzle or dot-to-dot picture thinking. Step 1 of PLTing for your students is to gather your materials. You're going to want charts. Unless these things are committed to memory, and they should be, but sometimes it's good to have them in front of you as well. You're going to want your verb endings, your noun endings, the preposition list, anything that we're working on, and also a glossary or word list. For the upper level students, this can be the glossary in the back of their book. For the younger students, very often we're using just the vocabulary from the chapter that we're on. But in any case, you want a way to look up these materials. These things need to be at your fingertips because we want to take away as many steps as possible from your students' load, right? It's much easier when you have those things in front of you. All right, there is a lot in this one slide. I recognize that is true, but I also wanted to point you to all of these steps and everything that we're talking about in terms of the how-to are also available in your students' Canvas course. Under the class resources, in every class, 4th, 5th, 6th, 7th, and 8th, there is a how-to document, and that it's for parse label translating, but there's also a how to decline and how to conjugate on there as well. So all of this is on there in way more detail than I'm actually going to give you today. So that may be something that you want to avail yourself of. I will not reference it much actually in class. Mrs. Rentschler may or may not reference it at all in class, but it is there for you, and I wanted to make you aware of that. Okay. The first step is always to identify the verb. This is very important. Then you're going to label it, V or LV, parse, and then translate. You'll notice that after every step, I want to translate the sentence as if that was the only part of the sentence. Then we're going to identify the subject. Label it the subject, parse, and then translate just those 2 parts, subject and verb. Then identify the predicate. Label, parse, and translate just those parts. The predicate can take a couple of forms. If there is a linking verb, and there's only one in Latin, it's sum esse, so sum esse. So any form of sum esse. If that's true, the predicate can be either a predicate nominative or a predicate adjective. And if you remember from the noun session, those are all going to be in the nominative case. If it's an action verb, then go look for a direct object, which is going to be in the accusative case. If there is a direct object, we're going to return back to the verb and write a T for transitive. Transitive means that the verb has a direct object. If there is no direct object, then we're going to return back to the verb and put an I for intransitive, meaning there is no direct object. Step 4 is to identify any prepositional phrases and seclude them with parentheses. We're going to label those preposition P and then the object OP. We'll parse the object to the preposition and then translate the sentence so far. Finally, we're going to identify any other words, adjectives, adverbs, conjunctions, anything else. Label all of those and then parse and translate the entire sentence. And then the last step is to check for understandability. If it doesn't make sense in English, then you have made an error someplace along the line. Notice that this particular way to do it means that you're building the sentence a little bit at a time. First, you start with the verb, then you translate subject verb, because in English, that's how we speak, subject verb. Then the predicate, you're adding them all together. And at no point is the student trying to take all of the words and make them like a puzzle piece and figure it out along the way. The last thing is to check for understandability, not the first. All right, so let's get started. The way that this is going to work is that I am going to speak out loud as if I am a student and walk you through this process. I'm going to ask the questions that I need students to ask to be able to do this. Okay, by the way, there is also another YouTube video on this exact same channel that is a just how to parse, label, translate, but it's at about a late fourth grade, early fifth grade level. So I'm starting out very simple with this particular one, and we're going to move into some more complex territory. Our eighth graders especially are doing about 20 parse, label, translate sentences for their homework this week. So this is going to take us a lot farther than that particular YouTube video would. But if you would like something for your student to watch in order to get started a little bit, that would be a good one for you to look at. This one may be a little over the heads of those fourth and fifth graders, but that one should be good. I made it for them. Okay, first example. I made a very small version of that list on every slide so that we can go and refer to it. Step 1 is to go and find the verb. Now I have to remember, because I have those endings, what are the verb endings? OST, mus, tis, nt. If your student has trouble finding the verb, ask them, what are some ideas about what the verb ending could be? OST, mus, tis, nt. And I see that there is a T right here. Grab a different color here. Here we go. I see this T right here. That T tells me that that's the verb, so I'm going to write a V right there above it. There's our verb. Okay, then I'm going to ask myself to parse. So it's a verb, so it's going to need the person, number, and tense. So the person, OST, is third. I'm using a new tool. I'm trying to see if it'll work. The number is singular, OST, and then it is indeed present tense that has no bombas spot, no bo bis bit, present tense. Okay. After every step, translate only that part in our mind. So far, third person singular says he, she, or it. He, she, or it, stands. So far, it says he, she, or it stands. So there is our first step done. I'm going to put a little check mark right there. Then we're going to look for our subject. Our subject has to match the verb in number. And the number of this particular verb is singular. So I have to look for a nominative singular. Subjects always have to be nominative. So nominative singular. So I'm going to look in the rest of the sentence to find a nominative singular. Well, this is a particularly short sentence, so it's easy to find. Nominative singular is right here. So now I'm going to parse it. Nominative, singular, feminine. Nominative, singular, feminine. And I'm going to put an S right above that because that's our nominative. That's our subject. Okay. Now we translate it as if it's the only word in the sentence, and it is in this case. Voila, the girl. We say, remember how we translate nominative, the something. The girl stands. The girl stands. So we would write, the girl stands. Another way to write that would be, the girl is standing, or the girl does stand. Those are all three proper ways to do it. I would only look for one of those first from a student. Okay. Now, we don't do this in fourth grade, but for those of you who are a little beyond fourth grade, now we go back. Does this verb have a direct object? It does not. So we're going to make it intransitive. And this sentence is now parsed, labeled, translated. We have parsed it here, we have labeled it here, and we have translated it here. Check for understanding. The girl stands. Yep, that makes sense. Okay, let us do another example. We have 4 examples that is possible for us to do today. Here's the second one. Example number 2, and we're going to get a slightly more complex each time. Okay, step 1. Go find the verb. Once again, we got to look at those or think about those verb endings. OST, mustis, und. And I see that there is a mus right there. Always look for the verb, by the way, at the end of the sentence first. That's most of the time where it's going to appear. All right, OST, mustis, und. What is its person? First person. And it's going to be plural because of mus. And then it is a present tense. Present tense because it doesn't have any bomba spot, no bo bis bit, present tense. And there's our verb. We've parsed, we've labeled the verb. Now we're going to translate it all by itself as if it was the only word in the sentence. Muss says we, da, that's the stem from do, da, 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 datum. So that says give. So far it says we give. We give. All right, now we're going to check that off. We give. Now we're going to look for the subject. Remember, a nominative subject that matches the number of the verb. The number is plural, so we have to look for a nominative plural. Nominative plurals could be I in first declension, or E in second declension, or ah in second declension. Looking at all of these endings, none of those seem to match. So where is the verb? Remember from our second session, every Latin verb is an entire sentence. This subject is hiding in the verb. So we're going to go back and write an S plus, an S plus. So we give is actually the subject and the verb. I've translated that. Now we're going to go on. We're going to find a predicate. Is this a linking verb? Is it a sum? Is it an is? No, it's a give. It's an action. So we will not worry about this linking verb. Nope. Instead, we're going to think about an action verb, and we're going to look for a direct object. We know direct objects take the accusative case, so we have to look for accusative case nouns. So I'm going to look back at my charts, and I'm going to see that the accusative case nouns include as, and ah. And I'm going to see this right here and say, ah, there it is, right there. There is our direct object. And I'm going to parse it because it's accusative. I just decided that I found that it was. It's accusative singular. It's from donum doni. That is a neuter word. So I'm going to make it be accusative singular, neuter. Okay. Now it has a direct object. So we're going to return back to the verb and make it say transitive. So subject plus transitive verb. Now we'll translate as if this was the only part of the sentence. We give a donum. We give a gift. We give a gift. Okay. All right. Check. Predicate. Prepositional phrases. I look to see if there's any prepositional phrases. I don't see any of those little prepositions anywhere, those little verbs or those little words that indicate prepositions. So we'll just skip on over. Now, other words. And what else is here? Well, I see pueris, and it has an is. That could be dative or ablative. So let's think to ourselves here. We give the gift. If it was dative, it could say to the boys. If it was ablative, it could say from the boys, with the boys, or by the boys. Well, it makes the most sense that it is to the boys, and that this is an indirect object. Dative, singular, masculine. There is some, part of puzzle making to this because you have to kind of figure out what works the best. However, from the boys doesn't necessarily work. It's not, our use cases at this point are essentially prepositional phrases, and there are none there. So now we have parsed everything. We have labeled everything. And now let's see if our translation makes sense. Damos, we give the gift or a gift to the boys. There's a good translation. Now, the reason that we do not take this as a puzzle piece is that here's what students will almost universally say when they look at this. They will say, the boys give the gift, because the boys happens to be the first word in the sentence. And in English, that is how it would read. But remember, dot to dot, not puzzles. We give a gift. The subject is here in the verb. We have to remember that we can identify the subject, and the subject has to be our subject in English. Okay? This is now parse label translated. Here's the third out of 4. All right, step 1, verb. Where is the verb? Remember, we have to go look for the OST. So let's go through. Here's an R, here's a T, here's an O, there's an E, and here's an Okay, so we have 2 that it could be here. There's wero and did it. So we can look up these words if you don't know them, and wero you will find out is a noun, so it can't be a verb. That leaves us with did it. Did it. Now, did it is indeed the verb here. So we're going to put a V over the top of it, and we're going to see which person it is, person number tense. It's got a T, so it is third person, and it is singular. And this is actually perfect tense. Our 7th graders will know this one after a little while here, perfect tense. And it means he, she, or it gave. So now I have parsed, I have labeled, and then I've translated just this verb. Put a little check mark. I have translated just the verb. He, she, or it gave. Now, go look for the subject. It has to be a singular one, a singular nominative. You can tell that this particular sentence is more accessible for our older students. But as promised, I wanted to make sure that we got some that were a little more complex so that you can see how they work. Singular subject has to be in the nominative case. And I look over here and I see pater. Pater is in the nominative case, so that is going to be our subject. Nominative, singular, masculine, pater. Pater means father. So let's translate this one all by itself as if the 2 were the only words in the sentence. Pater dated. The father gave. The father gave. Now let's go look for the predicate. Is this a linking verb? Is it sum assest, sum assestus sunt, some version of sum? No, it's an action verb. It's to give. It's deity. So we're going to go look for a direct object in the accusative case. And if we look at our charts, we're going to see that those accusative case choices would be as, or a. Well, I see 2 that could be here. But I take a look and I see, okay, this one has a prope and this one does not. Prope is a preposition. We're going to get to it later, but it tells me that silwam is not our direct object. Instead, agrum is. So we're going to put a do over our agrum, direct object, and then parse. Accusative, singular, masculine. That means field. So whenever I put a do, I'm going to head right back to the verb and say transitive, because it's a transitive verb if it has a direct object. And we'll translate this just as it is. The father, pater, dated, gave, agrum, a field. The father gave a field. All right, we can check this part of the sentence off right here. We did it. Now we're going to look for some prepositional phrases. Do we see any? Yes, we do. Here's a preposition phrase right here. We're going to take it out of the sentence by putting it into some parentheses. And in doing that, that helps us see the rest of the sentence more clearly. Let's label this. Let's label this a preposition and the object of the preposition right there. Now, our object of the preposition could either be in the accusative or the ablative, because our prepositions take either the accusative or the ablative. Well, tells us that it is accusative, looking at those charts, and that it is singular, and that it is feminine. So now, if we needed to look up any of these words to know what they meant, we could. But so far, our sentence says, pater, the father, because that's the subject, dated, gave, the field, direct object, prope silvam, near the forest. Okay, so we have now taken care of step 4. Now let's look for any other words. We just have one left, and that is wero. Wero. Wero comes from we're, weary. So this could either be dative or ablative. So we have to ask ourselves, I'm going to put these here just for a second, either dative or ablative, singular, masculine. So we have to ask ourselves, could it be the father gave the field to the man, for the man, by, with, or from the man? You can see that it's probably he gave it to the man, so it's not an ablative, it's dative. It's an indirect object. Now we can translate, and we can translate it in the order that is the English word order, and it goes like this. The father gave the field near the forest to the man. Now, notice the English translation does not go in the Latin word order. If we were going to do this in the Latin word order, it would just say, father gave man field near forest. Could you have translated it that way? The father gave the man the field near the forest? Yes, that is a perfectly acceptable translation. And it makes sense. We checked for understandability. We have parsed, we have labeled, and we have translated. Last one of the night. They're getting longer, aren't they? I appreciate your good attention, especially for those of us with older students or students who will eventually be older. It's good to see how this can work in a longer format. Step 1, find the verb. Remember, OST, mustisn't. So let's keep going. There's no OST. Nope. Here it is, right here. OST, it's the only one. So that's going to be third person, singular, and erit is the future because it is from ero, eris, erit, erimis, eritis, erunt. And that is indeed a linking verb. It means he, she, or it will be. So we're going to say he, she, or it will be. There's our verb. Check. Now we have to find our subject. It is a singular verb, so it has to have a singular subject. Our singular nominatives are, the possibilities are us, a, or And indeed, we actually see several us's. So let's look through here. Could it be erratus? Maybe, but that's an adjective, not a noun. Timidus, that's an adjective, not a noun, so it can't, neither of those can be the subject. And then I see nothing else that could be a nominative, so it is indeed Cincinnatus. Cincinnatus, that's his name, and by the way, that's where we get the word Cincinnati. There's our nominative, singular, masculine. So far the sentence says, Cincinnatus will be. There we found our subject. Cincinnatus will be. Let's go look for the predicate. If it's a linking verb, and this is, we're going to look for a predicate nominative or a predicate adjective that describes the subject. Do we have a predicate nominative and a predicate adjective? Why, yes, we do. Here they are. Erratus, nominative, singular, masculine. Timidus, there's another one. Nominative, singular, masculine. And these are both predicate adjectives because they are modifying Cincinnatus. They are talking about Cincinnatus. So they're predicate adjectives. So now we go through and translate just this part. And by the way, we do not need to worry about this at all because we don't have one of those. Okay, so let's translate. Cincinnatus, Cincinnatus, erit, will be erratus, angry, timidus, fearful. So next, we're going to look for some prepositional phrases. Do we see any prepositional phrases? Yes, we do. Here's a prepositional phrase right here, propter, all the way through inimicis. So let's go through and we'll label propter as our preposition, and then inimicis is our object. We know that it's not multis because multis is an adjective. It's not a noun. It can't have a noun job. So inimicis, we now need to parse it. It is ablative, and it is plural, And it is masculine from inimicus inimici. This is one of those that you could look up and see exactly which endings to use, which declension it's in. Now, because of enemies, Cincinnatus will be angry, afraid because of enemies. Now, clearly, this isn't good English yet, but we'll get there. Prepositional phrases, parsed and labeled. Now let's look for some other words. There are lots that there could be. Here's the first one, mox. Mox is an adverb. It doesn't have any endings to it. It means soon. So soon, Cincinnatus will be iratus, angry, timidus, scared. And here's an et right here. Et means and. It's a conjunction, so we're going to label it with a C. There's no way to parse it. There's no way to parse mox. So we say soon, Cincinnatus will be angry and afraid. Propter because of enemies. What kind of enemies? We just have one more word that we can parse, and that is this one. It goes with inimici, so you can tell it matches in case, number, gender, so it's ablative plural, masculine, and that is an adjective. Notice it is not a predicate adjective because it is not modifying the subject with a linking verb. It's just modifying another noun in the sentence, so it is an adjective. Now, let's go through and check for understanding. Here is a good translation. We have parsed, we have labeled, and here's our translation. Mox, soon. Cincinnatus will be angry and afraid because of, or let's just say even on account of, that's totally proper, the many enemies. There is a good translation. We have parsed, we have labeled, and we have translated. Now, it's important to be able to learn to do this. This was only 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 words. Our upper level students are currently translating Caesar, and some of his sentences are 40 words long, but this still works in this in those situations. So it's good to get this procedure down so the students understand how to pick apart a Latin sentence for easy reading. Now, does this get easier? Yes. By the time students practice this a little bit and they get a little bit older, this becomes very simple for them to do. So we want to make sure that our students are getting good practice in this all the way up from 4th grade, all the way up through 8th grade, so that in high school, this is a simple process for them. At this point, I want to say congratulations to you. If you have made it through all 6 sessions of Latin for Parents, I am very proud of you. You have made a good effort to help your students with Latin, and I want to commend you for doing that, for investing your evenings or your time with YouTube to be able to do that. Please know that I and Mrs. Rentschler are here anytime you need us. We are happy to help, happy to give you guys even some Zoom time with your students if you get stuck. But I want to thank you for your good attention through all of this time. And at this point, I want to say valete. Valete means goodbye, or even more than that, it means be well. So have a fantastic evening, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you.